What about all those innocent children? They say the smallest coffins are the heaviest, and there's no weight like that of a child's loss. It pulls on the soul in ways no words can ever capture. For their loved ones, especially a parent, it's unimaginable grief. How do you bury your whole world? But even when you're told that their souls are in a better place, does that really take away the pain? Where are they now? What happens when children by the thousands are being murdered and sent to the Barzakh? And how can we reconcile their restful fate with the sheer injustice of what brought them there in the first place? Before the people of Gaza endured this episode of the genocide, it was the image of Muhammad ad-Durra over 20 years ago being murdered in the lap of his father that became a symbol of the Palestinian uprising. Before the people of the ditch were thrown into their fire, it was the preaching of a young boy that set that tyrant off. Eventually, that same young boy was tied to a tree and had an arrow put right through him, killing him in front of his people. This preceded the genocide of his time, but he's still alive through the Quran that has immortalized his story until this day. His soul is with Allah forever, and his story remains with us. But something else happens in the time of the Sahaba that's extremely interesting. It's narrated that during the time of Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, as Islam spread throughout the world, they actually found the grave of this boy that they would read about centuries later. And guess what? His body was intact. In fact, it was so intact that the wound from the arrow was so fresh to the extent that when they moved his hand from it, the blood still flowed. How many times have you heard stories of the bodies of shuhada recovered throughout the world and in different generations, untouched by time, no sign of decay, just preserved, looking just like they did the day they were killed? Starting from the multiple times that the bodies of the shuhada of Uhud have been exposed during floods of Medina, with the bodies of the likes of Hamza and Mus'ab, may Allah be pleased with them, still easily identifiable, to the incredible stories of shuhada around the world today whose bodies don't decay after years and years. But in this particular time we live in, we're seeing bodies torn to pieces by the most sophisticated of weapons. And that disturbs the conscience in a unique way, because they're not being used against war combatants, but against children, little precious babies that actually make up the majority of the casualties. There's a saying from Nelson Mandela that there can be no keener revelation of a society's soul than the way in which it treats its children. What does that say about the state of the soul of our world that permits children to be blown to bits and starved to death as a matter of global policy? And that causes deep philosophical and theological issues for some. How do you come to terms with a soul that comes into this world and leaves it so quickly in such brutal fashion? Remember Muhammad Abul Qumsan, who had just picked up the birth certificates for his newborn twins when he found out that they were already killed? Think about the light of the soul coming from the realm of pre-existence to become a self in this world only for a few moments before it departs into eternal light. Can we see that light therein through the darkness of their murder? The Prophet ﷺ said, "Kullu mawludin yuladu ala al-fitra." Every newborn is born upon the fitra, which is their pure nature, meaning babies, infants, and children are innocent and pure in every sense of the word. That's why it's especially painful to see children become the targets of genocide. The innocence and purity violated, and all of the hopes, aspiration, and dreams of the child and their parents shattered. But Allah in His mercy refuses for that event to be the end of their story. We learn from our tradition that there's a very special experience awaiting the children in the Barzakh. And no one is more comforted than a parent, because no one feels the pain of the death of a child from this world, especially through murderous means, like the womb that brought them into this world in the first place. So when you see that child being killed, know that no one loves that child more than their parents. And if it hurts us to see the image of Muhammad al-Durra on our screens, think of his dad who had him martyred in his lap. As painful as the scenes of Hind Rajab, shot over 300 times in her car, with her ambulance call pleading for help, recorded for the whole world to hear. Think about how much harder it is for her mom to hear that call over and over again. Imagine if these people didn't have Jannah, but they do. And that's the hope the Prophet ﷺ would comfort a grieving mother with. In one incident, a young teenager named Haritha radiallahu anhu was killed in the Battle of Badr. And his mother came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, Ya Rasulullah, you know how much Haritha meant to me. If he's in paradise, then I'll be patient and I'll seek the reward from Allah. But if he's somewhere else, then you'll see what I'm going to do, meaning I'm going to lose my mind. And the Prophet ﷺ said, woe to you, O Haritha, is it only one Jannah? There are multiple levels of Jannah, and he's in the highest level of Jannatul Firdaus. She was then comforted knowing that Allah gave her child more than she could have given him as a mother. In the case of children, just as their murderers seemingly took away their future, the child will be in endless gardens. And just like the martyr, the child will be in birds flying around paradise, but not in the same bodies. SubhanAllah, even the birds they are in uniquely reflects their childhood innocence. Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu said that just like the shuhada have the bodies of at-tayr, green birds flying through Jannah as they wish only to return to their chandeliers nestled under the throne of Allah, he said the bodies of the children of the believers are in the bodies of asafir, small beautiful birds, tasrahu fil jannati haythu sha'at, also going around Jannah as they wish and returning to the throne of Allah. So their innocence and childhood is still preserved in the Barzakh, as their souls are even now in the bodies of smaller sweet birds to represent their childhood. Not only that, can you imagine those babies that are still fed by their mothers, being nourished by a special tree? Khalid ibn Ma'adan rahimahullah said, indeed in Jannah there is a tree called Tulba, whose branches are like udders, nourishing the children of the people of paradise. And this concept is corroborated by the Prophet ﷺ, who lost his own son and said, my son Ibrahim died while he was still nursing, and he has 2 wet nurses who will complete his term for him in Jannah. So they're not only in the bodies of these little birds at all times, but they have wings, and their childhood is being carefully preserved in heavenly fashion. Prophet ﷺ said, last night 2 people came to me and they made me get up and they said to me, let's go. So I set off with them. And he mentioned things that he had seen. And amongst those things, he says, we set off and we came to a luscious garden in which all the colors of spring were present. And then there was this man who was so tall that I could hardly see his head in the sky. Around that man was the largest number of children I had ever seen. Then among the things that the 2 angels explained to me was that as for the tall man who was in that garden, that was Ibrahim alayhi salam. And as for the children who were around him, those are all of the children who died in a state of fitrah. So one of the companions said, Ya Rasulullah, what about the children of the disbelievers? He said, and even the children of the disbelievers. So the infant and the child will be taken care of. What about their grieving parents they left behind in this world? Allah replaces them with even better parents. Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam and Sarah. And think how significant that is. Remember when Ibrahim and Sarah couldn't have kids for decades, but they were patient with the decree of Allah? And then they were gifted with Ishaq in this world, and through Ishaq, a nation full of prophets and messengers. And now in the next life, they're given even more than that, which is all of the children who have passed away until the day of judgment. Think of the pain of the parents around the world who have lost their children. Or maybe you yourself know of that pain because you